Begin transmission. Hello, everybody. It is Chris, aka Starrapter, joined by Ben. Just the two of us this week for episode number 68 of the podcast. This week, we're breaking down the disappointing news that the Knights of the Old Republic remake has been delayed. We're also talking about things like the ILM Light and Magic docuseries, all 6 episodes now streaming on Disney Plus, plus some High Republic news and much more on the podcast this week. How's it going, Ben?
Good. Other than that kind of news we're gonna get into, overall my week's gone pretty well. Just some of the little tidbits throughout the week for Star Wars, like some of the Clone Wars connections you've sent me. Those things are cool to hear about. We'll get into that. And then just the normal like talking Star Wars with other people and talking about it online to other people and you can definitely tell we're in kind of like a dead zone for Star Wars news because if you just go through several of like content creators or just fans online, if you just look up Star Wars stuff, there's not a lot of Star Wars people's really talking about like right now. Like there's not any big scoops coming out for the most part. There's not any like big controversies on Twitter and the fandom. Like it's just kind of like a quiet space right now before the big storm that is Andor here in a few weeks.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit on the down low, but I was on the Star Wars Underworld podcast this week. That's my
Yep.
little plug for the week. Yesterday, in fact, I was on the Star Wars Underworld with Ben Hart, with Jordan, and with Hannah from Culture Slate. We were talking about a lot of the topics we're going to be talking about tonight. So if you want some other input on what we talk about this week and some other stories, make sure you go over to StarWarsUnderworld.com or whatever your podcast streaming service is and go listen to that really good discussions on that 2 hour podcast that we had here. But yeah, it's fantastic. Time to be a Star Wars fan. We're on the cusp of a lot of things releasing, and well, it's a side thing. But that ILM docuseries that we'll be talking about a little later definitely has some really good tidbits that I can't wait to break down with you. But as we always start, what has been your week in Star Wars, Ben?
For me, nothing too extravagant, nothing out of the ordinary. Like just kind of like the same old. I've actually discovered I didn't even think about it before, but I'm gonna have to actually like buy the second Battlefront game, the original one off the Xbox store since I obviously can't play the disc. So I'm probably gonna buy that because that's only $10 and I just really hope, just talking about that game, like I guess my weekend Star Wars is more thinking along the lines of gaming since we're going to be talking about KOTOR a lot later tonight. I wish they would come out with some of the other like games as like backwards compatible, like get Shadows of the Empire somehow on console, get the Kenobi game on console, like those type of things. Like I wish they could just somehow like backwards compatible like every single Star Wars game that's out there. And just like, I feel like the way Star Wars could do it, for profit, of course, is like make it into like a Star Wars package. Like you have EA Play, why not have Star Wars Play? And like, boom, there you go, across all platforms. Like that could be a big thing. And then, have it like, your games being there or something. Because there's so many like backwards compatible games like that could easily be put on console, and it's just a matter of like of just wishing they were. But I don't think we'll ever get like the Kenobi game. That's always like been the pipe dream, or even just like an updated Republic Commando game with updated graphics like they did with the Halo series, for example. That would be really sweet. Just little odds and ends things like that was kind of like what I was thinking about this week.
Yeah, it's interesting because there are a lot of games that are released on different platforms, but not on Xbox. For instance, if you look at Steam, there are several titles. I'm gonna actually pick up my Steam account right now, and I'll tell you exactly what's on there and what isn't on Xbox. 'Cause I'm pretty sure I can guess at most of those. So if I'm going through the list, Star Wars Dark Forces isn't on there. Jedi Knight Dark Forces. You got Jedi Academy. You got Jedi Outcast. You got Knights of the Republic 1 and 2, Republic Commando. You do not have Rogue Squadrons 3D. You do not have Shadows of the Empire. Starfighter they have, Force Unleashed 1 and 2, uh, TIE Fighter, Star Wars TIE Fighter and X-Wing. That's only ever been um, on PC. So yeah, there's a couple. Then there's one that's on PlayStation. Or actually, I think there could be a couple on PlayStation. I don't believe Racer is on Xbox, but it might be on PlayStation. But the big one for me that really irks me is the fact that they don't have Star Wars Bounty Hunter on Xbox, but yet they
Yep.
have it on PlayStation. Like that is one of my most replayed Star Wars games because I'm such a big fan of that. So, um,
Oh, that game was
yeah.
excellent back in the day. Like that was one of the most fun stories. Like, the fact that you're being Jango Fett, especially like during the time period of like Attack of the Clones like coming out and all of that. Like that was such a great game back then. It's like, gosh, I wish it was on Xbox because I would play it right now if it was available. I would go and buy it for $10 or whatever, and play it just because, that was a fun game. And I feel like if they bring back like a game like that, it would potentially, it wouldn't make millions and millions of dollars, but it would make a few $1,000, I would say, probably, because fans of The Mandalorian would I'm sure they would pick it up
Oh
just
yeah.
because it's like, oh my gosh, I'm playing as a bounty hunter, blah blah blah. Like, it's that whole thing. So I feel like that game, if they would kind of like re-soft launch it onto the Xbox, that would bring in some money, like maybe, I don't know, maybe 500 grand, like a half million or something, like, just something to do. And I'm sure it would be cheap to transfer over. It's just a matter of like, why not? Is my question.
Yeah, that was back in the time where I was in this weird area where I didn't have an Xbox, I didn't have a PlayStation 2. So I was playing a lot of these third party Star Wars games on a GameCube. So I had that,
Yep.
I had Jedi Outcast all on GameCube. But yeah, you better believe if they released that Jango Fett game on Xbox, I'd buy it in a heartbeat. I'd buy it so quick because like exactly, right? That's the zeitgeist of what's going on. People love the Mandalorians. So what not, you know, screw it, just make
I
a
mean,
new.
Boba talks about his father in the Mandalorian, even like
Yeah.
tied into that. Like, hey, there you go. If you go to re-advertise this bounty hunter game, show like the clip of Boba like talking about his father and blah blah blah, and then
My father,
boom,
Boba Fett.
bounty hunter returns.
Oh man.
Like,
So yeah, I mean, and even going back further, right? I don't know how they would do this, but like get the Super Nintendo Star Wars games. Those are
yeah,
legendary. There are legendary games, and I'm sure there'd be so many people covering those because people love like the really difficult games. I mean, just look at Elden Ring, right? I could see so many like Twitch streamers and stuff like trying to like get through without dying once and everything, and that'd be so darn difficult.
well, you can't save. I mean, like
Yeah.
those games were like impossible. If you didn't have like a chunk of time to play it, you're done basically. Like those
Uh-huh.
games were a blast. And like we for sure, and of course, like I'm sure, especially with you, but we for sure need Shadows of the Empire like adapted to Xbox, because man, that would be awesome. Like I know you would be like doing a full walkthrough on your
Oh
channel with
yeah.
that.
Yeah, for sure. I want to shout out the chat. We have Jesse Bennett. Friday plans canceled. Here I am. Thanks for joining me. I was recently on his podcast, so go ahead and check that out when it comes out. He does a podcast called Question Possible Answer, where it's basically we pick a topic and we, like a movie, for instance, and we kind of talk about the multiverse aspect of it from a certain degree of like, what would happen if this happened and like talk about the physics of certain things happening if they could happen. So that was a lot of fun. We talked about the
Nice.
Sonic movie. Had a great time for the first time on his podcast. So go ahead, follow that Question Possible Answer podcast on any of your preferred podcast networks. I do not believe that episode is up quite yet, but it is in the works right now. So yeah, but he's also chiming in, Jesse. I remember a Rogue Squadrons game on GameCube had a co-op Death Star run. One of my favorite missions. Yeah, I think that probably was Rogue Leader, if I'm not mistaken. There was two different Rogue Squadron games on GameCube. There was Rogue Squadron 2 Rogue Leader, Rogue Squadron 3 Rebel Strike. And I want to say that was in Rogue Leader, but I don't remember the co-op part. That's really interesting. Like one of you could be Biggs, one of you could be like Luke. That would
Yeah,
be
see, I feel like I
really fun.
remember that because my cousin had a GameCube back then. I'm pretty sure I remember that too. I mean, you may have just not like played it back then, or just may have not. But I feel like I remember playing a co-op on that game. I think.
Yeah, that's got to be a topic for a future podcast is Star Wars games we want to see get the remastered slash or remake status. Because there are a bunch that I would love to do, and that could be a lot of fun looking into the future of like, hey, if Lucasfilm wants to canonize some of these adventures that a lot of them are legends, they got a lot of cool
Yeah.
content to pull from. So
Oh, for sure. I mean, we could do those. There's plenty of heck, you could turn especially with like so many of the free app games nowadays, like you could turn like say the Masters of Terrace Kai game into like
oh
a
my
free
gosh,
just a free fighting game, on the Xbox store and like add in your battle passes and stuff just to
oh
make,
my
make some money
gosh.
off there. Like and people enjoy those like kind of button mashing fighting games. I mean, we were talking before the call the multiverse game that just came out.
Yep.
Like people love that stuff because it takes quote unquote no skill because it's not like it's like Halo where it's like intensive where you're having to pay attention to every little thing. Like you're just moving left and right and up and down on the screen fighting. And I'm not great at that game, but still it's just fun. It's just kind of like mindless gaming, just entertainment. And like I feel like something like that with Star Wars. I mean, heck, at this rate, now that I'm talking it out, let's just get like a Star Wars Super Smash Brothers style game. Might as well at this point.
I mean, hunters, they got hunters. That's pretty goofy. So they're not
True.
they're not far off from that. As far as my week at Star Wars, I received a cool gift from a client. This is nice because I have a couple of these already, but what I received is a little Lego set. So this is pretty cool, like a little Han Solo micro fighter. I have the.
Oh, nice.
Let me show you the ones I have right now because I can actually grab them.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, so I have the airspeeder here, and I have the little AT-AT right there. So there you go. These are nice little compact little vehicles that you can really put anywhere. So that's why I like it's not a huge set, you know what I mean? But they're small
Hmm.
enough to just put somewhere on your desk, whatever. So now I got them Millennium Falcon I got to build, and they're very quick to build. This thing's like 100 pieces or something like that.
Oh
So
yeah, those little sets are really neat. Like my cousin actually, his girlfriend got him the Luke's land speeder one actually. Um, but yeah, those sets are like really great value. Like you mentioned, you can get them for your desk, and whether you're at work, at home, wherever, put them on your shelf, etc. Like those are nice little pieces to set out.
yeah, it's got Han Solo, so it's like I got a Han Solo here. This is something I've needed. Not that I have a lot of
Exactly.
Legos, but I mean, come on, you gotta have one of the big three in Lego form, I guess. So, but for everybody that's joining us live, thank you for joining us. Send your thoughts and comments in a chat, just like Jesse Bennett has been doing. If you're listening after the fact, go ahead and join us. Friday nights around 9 o'clock Eastern is when we do go live on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Starrapter. And you can catch us after the fact. New episodes premiere on any podcast streaming network, including Google, Apple, Spotify, and more on Monday mornings. So there you go. We have a Teespring as well. If you want to represent our brand, Outer Rim Transmission, just go to teespring.com and search Outer Rim Transmission. You'll find our merch over there. So without further ado, we're going to jump into what's out this week. And there's some pretty big things, some things that also disappointed me. Um, so getting into the first thing here, we're going to go through the comics. And the first thing we have here on our docket is Dr. Aphra issue number 22. Now this one was a nice surprise. This one had Dr. Aphra. She's been taken over. This is as Dr. Aphra crazy as it gets with this current storyline with these ascendant people who are these dark side. They're not dark side users, but they are this ancient people cult. You want to call them a cult that like is obsessive over the Sith, and they want to emulate the Sith. So they use technology like magnets and different things to emulate them, like pseudo using Sith power. So we get to see, after getting one of these artifacts called the Spark Eternal, which turns her basically into an evil undead version of Dr. Aphra. So this issue is all about inside of her head, going through her past memories with this dark entity side by side, re-experiencing her memories from inside her own head. So very trippy, very crazy, very cool. Now the next issue I want to talk about is Obi-Wan issue number 3. And I had already told you about this one, Ben, where I was like, yeah, this is probably one of the best, for those of you watching on YouTube. I just showing the issue off right now. The cover has Obi-Wan, Cody, and a legion of the 212th behind him, valiantly standing up to what is to come in the Battle of Aberon Bridge. And this issue, on so many levels, is what I've been looking for from Star Wars comics for a long time. It uses the medium of the comics to really push through an original specific tale that is all compiled into one simple story, all standalone, that goes from start to finish and adds a lot of detail and adds a lot of stakes as well as some losses and different things. So that's what I really love about this issue. Even before we get into the battle, I was already loving the issue because, as I was talking to Ben, he alluded to earlier in this episode, it does canonize some of the things from Tarkovsky's Clone Wars, such as Grievous on Hypori, where he slays all these Jedi, and Kaina Mundi's there. That's the first appearance of Grievous, and they literally say that in this. That's the first time they've seen him. And then we also get the whole thing with Dantooine with Mace Windu just slaying a bunch of droids. Now, if you want to be very specific, the Brotherhood novel by Mike Chen already kind of canonized those events, but still, it's cool seeing those in comic book form. So what do you have to say about that, first of all, Ben? I know you might have a few words about how they've been sprinkling in some of the things like that.
Hey, I mean, you know me. I love that Clone Wars series, and the fact they're canonizing different parts of it is awesome. And like, to me, that makes me think they're gonna probably continue to they'll continue. I would say they'll probably continue to like sprinkle them in more and more here and there, and basically, just continue to add them in where possible. Like, I mean, it's the whole thing of like, why not? Like, if there's a slot where you can fit that story in, then why not just canonize it and add it into canon? And like in this case, in this instance, you can make kind of a new story around the event, and then like at the end of the day, you can profit off it. You can make a cool comic, and like you just said, it's one of your most favorite comics, like the look of it, etc. Like all of that, I feel like it's like a win for all sides, like for Disney, for Star Wars, for us as fans. Like getting these type of events canonized, to me, it's great for the Tartakovsky Clone Wars, but it's also great in general for canon as a whole, because that means they can continue to cherry pick from Legends to basically pick out whatever like the really good stories are from Legends and work with them in the current like continuity, basically.
Yeah, so getting into the actual story, before I even get into that, I was remembering the build up to this. Even at Celebration,
Yep.
Christopher Cantwell was talking about this issue specifically on the panel for Marvel. And he was saying he actually had to go through so much research because this is an entirely new battle that was brought up. And this is in the early onset of the battles in the Clone Wars, right? This is like that season 1 type of, like we are like year 1 of Clone Wars out of 3. It's after the events of the Christophus. It's after the events of Hypori. It's even after the events of what happens with rookies on that like little outpost there. So they got information about this bridge. But what makes this story so good is like they build up the stakes and everything by like showing the clones, like Cody like acknowledging that one of the clones decided to take his own name rather than identification number. So it shows that individuality. It shows like the whole crux of the story is Obi-Wan struggling with the fact early in the Clone Wars that the Jedi have suddenly become generals, and they are not they're peacekeepers. Like, and that goes along hand in hand with, again, Mike Chen's Brotherhood novel, which really delves a lot into those ideologies of what are the Jedi actually, what's their purpose, are they doing what they should be doing, Are they setting out to be what they are meant to be? And all those like kind of like questions at the heart of it, right? But then there's just some kick-ass action. There's things I've wanted to see in the Clone Wars, such as full-scale wars where they have assaults at sea, assaults on a bridge from both directions, where you have multiple units just like coordinating together in a way that it's drawn by Alessandro, um, to be very easy to follow and very epic and very big, and lots of great coloring all around. And it's really neat to see like it's not always just droids and clones, because they actually, this might be the first time I've ever seen it where they actually had like regular humans fighting with the clones and regular aliens fighting with the separatists. So it's interesting because Obi-Wan was like thinking about all the lives that he had to kill on the other side, not just, you know, biotic things like organics that he had to like kill to win the day. And Obi-Wan at one point was like basically like giving into victory, giving into that bloodlust from a certain degree of like the war, like, yes, we're winning this. And he had to take himself back for a moment, like, how am I behaving this way? Like, this is not right. I should not be relishing in war. And you see him like handling a dead clone trooper, the same one that was named in the beginning of the issue, was this like the very heartfelt moment between Obi-Wan and the clone. But man, oh man, yeah, I have an entire review of this issue on the channel already, but I just can't say enough good things about this. And I immediately went on Twitter and said, we need like an entire mini series of like one-off, like epic scale Clone Wars battles of this magnitude, because there's still so much. Even though we had like, you know, over 100 episodes of Clone Wars, like those episodes involving the clones were my favorite. Like the rookies,
Yeah.
the Umbara arc, all that landed at Point Rain with Geonosis, the stuff we've seen in the later episodes as well. Just fantastic stuff.
Well, hey, I mean, you know, I'm always like the bring back Tartakovsky guy. Like, why not? If they don't want to like say invest full scale money into like the CG version of Clone Wars, bring Gendry Tartakovsky back to do like
Oh
start
man.
adapting, adapt all of these comics into the little 5-8 minute stories. Like, you know, because he obviously has a track record. Like, to me, not because I love it so much, but like his Clone Wars series, there's not a bad episode in that series, because each episode's like 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, and like he knows how to tell the story so concise, so you know, he gets the point across. And I feel like he would be like the perfect person to adapt a lot of these like Clone Wars era comics. Like he could adapt, you know, more of this story. He could adapt, you know, whatever stories are coming next or that have came prior in the Clone Wars comics, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I feel like, you know, he would be like a perfect one, you know, especially with the anime style. Now that we're getting Visions, you know, boom, bring him back into the fold and have him be like the Clone Wars anime guy.
Mm. That would be interesting. There's a lot of potential for that. There really is. And
Yeah,
you would think it's cheaper to do that kind of animation. I would expect. I'm not
you
an
would
animation
assume.
expert, but you would think that that would have to be. And that goes to the age old question for us canon fans out there. Are they going to ever adapt, let's say, Dark Disciple or Brotherhood even, or something to that degree where it's like, okay, does Disney and Lucasfilm want to invest money in stories that already have been told, but maybe to reach a wider audience? It's a very hard to answer thing, because it's like, yes, it'd be great, but also they could also tell stories that are meant to be in the live action or animated medium that I haven't seen yet. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
like
Well,
picky, where it's
well,
like
I
some of
get,
that would be cool,
I
but like put money towards new stories too, you know?
well, I guess let me turn that whole like analysis back around on you. So let's, for example, say, would you? Of course, we love these like Lego specials. We'll talk about them, etc., coming up later. But if you could cut out, say, the summer Lego special and whatever, say 2 Lego specials, like so an hour and a half worth of content, will you cut that out and do an hour and a half adaptation of Brotherhood type?
Hmm.
You know, like a mini movie type deal. See, that's like to me where like, you know, where you're putting your resources at. Like, would you chop down on some of these other, like for example, even like the project with, say, all the given I'm sure it was like really cheap, like the project with all the environments, cut that out, cut some of the Lego stuff out, put some of those resources toward adapting, even just do one novel per year, or something, or one novel per quarter, like so do like 4 books per year or something,
No.
and like go from there. Like, see, that's the hard, like you said, it's hard. Do you want news stories, or do you want them to adapt the books?
The Lego stuff has to stay, man. I feel like that's great content for all ages, and
Yeah.
it usually gets a large resonant. I mean, they wouldn't keep doing them if they weren't doing well, right? This would be the third one. They've been doing one a year. I don't think they've been doing more than one. One came out a holiday, that was November. Then the following
Oh
year,
yeah,
they got
that's
one
true.
October. This is a new year, so I don't expect them to come out with any more after this. They would have announced that at Celebration if they were. I mean, the year's already halfway over, right? So I would assume that there may not. Maybe they'll have one in February for Valentine's Day, right, or something like that to be
Hey.
2023. So I mean, I like the idea that that can be seasonal content, and it's content that we know the quality of, and it's there for all ages. But yeah, I mean, why can't they maybe do one novel adaptation I'm not a year. I'm not saying that they have to do like multiple a year, but maybe one a
Yeah.
year would be a pretty cool idea. It's
Well,
just
well, my,
yeah,
well, my thing with that is, I think the way you do it too, to like say, kind of like maximize your profit, is don't do it as soon as Brotherhood comes out. Like, wait a full calendar year till it's ran its cycle, basically, and then release it. Like, so you're releasing it, a year later, and like you're expanding the lifespan of the Brotherhood story by like another year, basically, by releasing a movie, versus like, if you release it alongside the book, and if it's on Disney Plus, then people, you'll have people going, why would I spend the whatever 15, $20 on the book when I can stream it? So like, I think if you like kind of like stagger the releases, almost like they're doing with the Legends books now, like, you're doing them here and there. They're not going boom and releasing all the Legends, like, they're not coming out saying we're releasing 30 Legends books all at once.
yeah,
Like, they're staggering them. So like,
yeah.
maybe just stagger the release. Like, if you're releasing Brotherhood this year, like maybe next March they're like, oh hey guys, we're releasing a Brotherhood mini movie, animated, etc. Like,
Yeah,
something like that.
I think Ben, a good model for this would be you look at DC, right? They have a lot of original
Oh yeah,
animation, but then every once in a while they do get an adaptation, a loose adaptation of something like Injustice or
the Long
what
Halloween.
The Long Halloween or whatever one that didn't go well with the Joker and he kills Batgirl or something. What was that one called?
Yeah.
It's the famous one. I don't know, but just say a name and anything's been basically adapted in in DC, right? So they
Yep.
could take that approach, right? And do that. Speaking of Legends books, I want to throw this one out there because I didn't originally think of this. And I was out in New York City, as I'm often at Brooklyn. We were just walking around this mall. I was like, oh, let me check Target. Gonna see that the Star Wars section of books, and then they didn't really have a large one. Then I went to another store. Literally not a single Star Wars book in that entire bookstore. And it was like a really nice bookstore. I went to science fiction. Not a single Star Wars book. I was like, what is happening here? Then I flashed forward to Wednesday, going to my comic book store, and they've gotten a new owner in the last like 6 months, and he's been doing a good job of bringing stuff that's not just comics in. Like he's been bringing records and a lot more toys and merchandise. And I'm walking around, and I end up seeing like an entire area of Star Wars books all of a sudden. Like, wait, what? Like, this is the largest selection I've seen of Star Wars books in any place in recent memory. And I was just sitting there, and it was like all the canon books in paper. They're all paperback. It was like all the canon paperback books, and like almost all the Legends books on these like 3 or 4 shelves. And I'm just like, holy crap! And I went up to the guy, and I was like, did somebody just sell their whole book collection? He's like, you could say that. I was like, holy crap.
Oh yeah.
So like, I was
The
like, I told him, I was like, well, if there's anything left, he's like, oh yeah, people have already bought like 10 or 20 of these books in the last couple of days. I'm like, well, if there's anything left next week, I'll bring extra money and maybe I'll buy a couple.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Some of those places you can find really good finds. Like so like every year we go to Virginia Beach in June usually. I mean, as our viewers know, like I was talking from Virginia Beach a month ago. So like back probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we went there, and then usually on our way back to our cousins from the beach, there's like a Goodwill there, and it's literally an old Supercenter Walmart that got converted, so it's huge. And like they have a big book section, like an entire one of their entire walls is a book section. And I kid you not, it was like a similar experience as you had, Chris. It was like one entire section. It was like every single like Star Wars Legend book possible. And I was just like, man, I want to literally just buy
Oh,
every single one of these things because they were only like $2 a piece. But we had flown, so it's like, I can't bring back like
yeah.
40 books or something. But if we would have driven that time, I would have probably bought $100 worth of those books and just bought basically the whole like Legends, because there was literally like 40, 50 books there. And it
Oh,
was like
wow.
oh man, this is killing me because I just want to like spend, like I said, they were only $2 a piece. It's like, I just want to buy them all.
Yeah.
But like some of those stores like that, you can just find odds and end deals like that on books, or like you said, like people will sell off their book collections, and inevitably if they're like say someone from the 90s, early 2000s, an adult back then would be like maybe 40s, 50s, 60s now, they might be just getting rid of the books, and we're finding like whole collections.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. I wasn't expecting to see that. It was like a joyful moment. It's like, oh man, this is pretty cool. The Legends fans are out there in full force. And the other thing that came out this week, flashing back to our chronological show notes. Surprise, we don't have a whole lot, which is why we're kind of vamping a little bit on this podcast, which is perfectly fine because some of the best conversations happen in just nonchalant ways like we are tonight. But I also picked up this novel, and this is what I alluded to earlier. I'm not really a big fan of this book so far. As you can see, I'm almost done
Uh-oh.
already. Star Wars Padawan. This is written by Kirsten White. This is the book that really showcases. It's a young adult novel. It showcases Obi-Wan in the first. It seems like first weeks or so that he basically became the Padawan of Qui-Gon Jinn. Essentially, what happens is Qui-Gon Jinn is just Obi-Wan just feels like he's not the right match for Qui-Gon. Apparently, Yoda picked Obi-Wan for Qui-Gon to train. Like usually the master has to train and pick their own pupil, their own Padawan. But in the weird case of this situation, Yoda was like, "Hey Qui-Gon, you got to train this little kid Obi-Wan," and he's 16. He's like, "Okay." So Obi-Wan is like the complete opposite of Qui-Gon. He doesn't want to meditate, and all Qui-Gon wants to do is meditate. Obi-Wan wants to seek adventure, loves lightsaber combat, and Qui-Gon really doesn't want him to do that. All his friends, which one of them is named Siri from Legends, from the Young Apprentice, whatever the heck those novels are you're
Yep.
talking about. Um,
Yep. Young
he's
Apprentice novels.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, well, all his friends that are Padawans now, they all are going on these adventures all over this, the galaxy and all that stuff, and he's stuck on Coruscant. So, without giving too much away, eventually he finds a clue to something that takes him off planet. He doesn't want to wait for Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon is not responding for whatever reason, and he goes off planet to this planet. He finds these kids that have Force type abilities, and that's where the story kind of grinds to a halt for me. And what I will say, this is a first impression. I'm not done with the book, so I can't like give it like complete thoughts right now. But what I will say is it feels like it's a really good young adult novel without a lot of the Star Wars I expect to see from a Star Wars book. So there's a lot of great like in the head of Obi-Wan. And I will say I'm almost burdened like hit over the head with it too much because it's probably the only Star Wars book I read that has literally one perspective, one character the entire book. So for me that I like having jumping between different characters because it helps the pacing a lot. But when you literally are in the head of Obi-Wan Kenobi for 400 something pages, it starts to get like a little old. Really. And the thing is, I feel like it is a little bit repetitive. Like we keep having the thoughts of Obi-Wan saying repeatedly, like, I want to leave the Jedi Order, maybe because Qui-Gon's not paying attention to me. Why are my friends getting this attention and I'm not? And it's very much emo Obi-Wan, to put it lightly. Very much emo Obi-Wan. Um, but like all that stuff works great for a young adult novel of anything. But when you have Star Wars as a label on this, I expect to see some lightsaber combat. There's been none of that. I expect to see something that ties in with something, and it's just so far flung on its own. If you take Obi-Wan out of this equation, it could be just anything. And I think that really hurts it in the end because I expect there to be some more substance to a Star Wars story. But I think the writing is good. It's doing what a young adult novel needs to do, which is it's that coming of age story, right? The people reading this that it's aimed for are the kids that are in high school. It's teaching them a lesson about power, doing what's right, exploring, understanding who you are as a person at this moment of transition. So it's doing all that stuff well. I just wish there was a little bit more Star Warsing in the Star Wars book.
Oh man, that's tough. Like that's a tough a tough sounding novel, I would say, or tough sounding young adult book. Like I just like, to me, especially the whole concept coming from Obi-Wan's perspective virtually the entire time. Like I think, without even reading it, like, take my opinion with a grain of salt just because I haven't read it yet, but from one character's perspective the entire time, like, to me that is a complete turnoff as a reader, and just in my experience, because you have to, like, with a lot of books, you have to give the story time to breathe.
Yeah.
And like, I don't want to be the person like always comparing it to like Legends, because they're Legends books now, but like, for example, in like the original Jedi Apprentice series, like, the storyline you have, it's broken up into multiple things. Like, Obi-Wan has his whole stuff in the beginning of that series, and he leaves the Jedi Order. He basically gets sent to be pretty much like a worker on a planet, and you have his like stuff going on with him on that planet, and then it cuts back, and you're dealing with Qui-Gon going on a mission, dealing with pirates and this sort of stuff, and you get, actually, in like that series, you get solo Qui-Gon, fighting pirates and whatnot, and like you get stuff like that where it's lets the story breathe before him and Obi-Wan even meet. I mean, heck, he doesn't even become like Obi-Wan's master for like 5 or 6 books. So like, that story was played out over many, many books versus just one. So like, it's hard to like compare, but to me, I don't know, like, the whole idea just in general of like coming from Obi-Wan's perspective mainly for a book is just, it's a pass in my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't want to look too much into this, and forgive me if I'm sounding like, oh, is this a conspiracy or something, but I know a friend of mine was saying that, like, he didn't receive a advanced reading copy for this book. And that's really strange. He said, he's like, they always give me one. I really didn't see any publicity about the book. They didn't release any excerpts ahead. So I just don't know if Lucasfilm didn't have confidence in this book. Again, I'm not trying to, like, sound like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling with this book or something, but I just found it curious how that happened. But, I mean, for those of you that are Obi-Wan fans, I'm putting my review out pretty soon. I'll probably finish this by tomorrow because it's a quick read, at least with that. It's a quick read. But it's just, again, I was hoping for a little bit more. Got plenty of introspection, maybe a little bit too much of it, and not enough plot substance, because I feel like the plot itself is very just like, okay, what are we doing here? We're going back and forth. We're doing this. There's a cool High Republic connection, which is the thing that excited me the most. Is the whole crux of the story is following like clues left behind from a very prominent High Republic Jedi that we all know about. So that is the one thing that's like really keeping me reading, is like learning more about, like, oh, why is this character in the story? And I just got to a chapter where it's revealing why this person was there, and what could happen next, and all this sort of thing. I am happy that they are connecting the dots with the High Republic in like the more current times, especially with the Jedi we know. There was a moment in one of the Star Wars comics where Luke Skywalker ended up in this, like, I want to say it's a sort of not Mimban, Mortis. I was thinking of the other M word. It's like a Mortis chapter where Luke goes into this planet and finds Elzar Mann, who is one of the most prominent Jedi in all of the High Republic, and Elzar Mann is like telling him about the High Republic and about how everything was going down there. And it was like a really cool like info dump, but it was neat to see like Luke, interacting with a character that was like around 200 years prior. So it's neat that we're seeing like stuff like retroactively kind of inserted and make it feel like it's a cohesive galaxy, which it should be. with canon and all.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like those type of things are nice nice additions to like overall canon, the overall story. Like I was having a similar discussion this week with somebody. I was recommending them like the Catalyst book for,
Yep.
for tying into Rogue One because they were asking me like, what's a good book that like ties in with the movies? And I was like, Catalyst is like probably as close as you can get to like a tie into a movie because it's the characters directly involved, etc. So it's nice when you have pieces of content that just tie in, like you said, tie in with like the greater scope of the galaxy, whether it be like Luke connecting with that Elzar man, or like Obi-Wan dealing with his stuff with this High Republic, like the clues and whatnot. Like, it's nice when you're getting connections versus, just being like not recognized, basically.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So there you have it. Keep locked on the channel. My review will be coming soon for Star Wars Padawan by Kirsten White. And with that said, we're going to move on to our main topic this evening. And it's a topic I did not ever want to discuss. Who wants to ever discuss delays, especially with me when it comes to video games, which it's just a problem anymore, guys. Every other day we're seeing game after game after game getting delayed. Like, what's going on? I think what's happening is we're getting to that point where these games were okay. So a lot of the games that came out during the pandemic were already like 90% done. So they were at that point where they were in the polishing stages where, yeah, if they had to work from home, they'd be good. They can finish that game because it's almost done already. So like a lot of the 2020 releases were fine. A lot of 2021 releases are fine. And we're looking at 2022, and it's where it's catching up because a lot of these games were literally like in the middle of being produced, and these studios had to scramble and find ways of coordinating work and all. Now they're finding that, even a couple of years later, they're still like grinding to a halt when it comes to some of these things. So now we're seeing more and more of those later developed games getting pushed back, whether it be the Xbox games, whether it be the PlayStation games, to the third party games. And now we have Knights of the Old Republic Remake. It was supposed to come out end of 2023, I think people were saying. Now, according to this report, this comes from Bloomberg. This is a legit break of news because this comes from somebody that was often breaking news, Jason Schreier, formerly of Kotaku Games. So yeah, apparently they basically this game is being made by Asper. They are a development house that makes basically ports. They've ported over Knights of the Republic to iPhone, iOS. They've since done Republic Commando and Pod Racing and all those like games we were talking about in the beginning of the show. A lot of those games basically ported over. So what does that mean? That basically means when you port a game, you're taking the old code and you're maybe allowing it to run on a new system. Let's say an Xbox game can now run on a Nintendo Switch. So a lot of it is I'm not a game developer, so I don't want to try to act like I know what I'm doing here, but it's not a lot of work compared to building a game from the ground up. So these guys were contracted to work under the leadership of Lucasfilm Games, right? This isn't EA, this is Aspyr, and they are being helped by Sony Online Interactive, or whatever they are called, Sony Interactive Entertainment, SIE, I think. So they're being bankrolled by Sony as well, which is why this is going to be a exclusive game for PlayStation and PC, and maybe eventually hit Xbox, who knows. So basically what happened was recently they had put out a demo, which is like a vertical slice. Like they took one part of the game and showed it to the investors, I guess, or whoever was looking at this thing. And a week later, they basically fired the game director and the art director of the game, or the design director and the art director. And they had no idea that this was happening to them. It was completely unexpected. And now, according to somebody, like this game would now have a more realistic target of at least 2025. But right now, like everything is like delayed. They're saying that they're bringing in another company called Saber Interactive, who worked on a lot of the Halo games and stuff, like to help port them and things like that for the Master Chief Collection. So, yeah, it's completely in flux right now. I kind of seen this coming. Not that I wanted to say that, but like put it this way, I was questionable. I was hesitant when they announced the developer being Asper, as I mentioned they are not well versed with making games from the ground up, so I don't know why you would choose them. I understand, like BioWare, the original developers of Knights of the Republic, they're guys that are busy right now. They have Mass Effect 4, they're working on Dragon Age 3, or Dragon Age 4, sorry. So they're very busy with stuff over there. But I don't know, they could have gotten another seasoned developer, right, to work on this. I'm not saying that these guys aren't up for the challenge, but obviously something went wrong, and it's terrible to see people lose their jobs, obviously. But I just hope this gets resolved. And yeah, that's my first salvo of thoughts on this matter. I'll throw it over to you, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much back everything you just said. Like, and you did mention that, like, when we talked about this months ago, when we talked about this, the first initial news of this game, like that was a concern you raised on that podcast episode. So now it's like unfortunately reared its ugly head, and the bad thing about the whole situation is, you presumably been working on this game 2-3 years, and then like you fire the art director and the design director and stuff, and like firing your art director and your design person, like that's pretty much means you're starting over.
Yeah,
You're basically starting from square one again. So it's like, we're looking at another, like you said, another probably 3 years, so 2025 at the earliest. I would lean more toward like 2026 at this point, honestly. And to me, it's just of course this isn't like directly like Lucasfilm because it's a game. It's a game developer. But to me it's like gosh, all of these like things keep happening with Star Wars in general, and it just makes me want to like pull my hair out. And I joked to my one buddy, I was like, well, now the island of like movies that have been announced but canceled they'll have a video game to play on that island now at this point. And it's just like, I want this game to come out, and it's like, here we are. So it's like, what's next? I mean, look, we dealt with that with Lego. Lego kept getting pushed, getting pushed,
oh
getting
my
pushed.
God.
I mean, at least it finally came out. It was a great game.
Oh yeah.
But it's just the whole. At this point, by the time this game's out, it'll probably been worked on for like 6 or 7 years, and it's just like, I don't know. There's just so many like management issues. And of course, like I caveat, it is it's not directly under like the purview of like the main people at Lucasfilm, but still, like to me, it's just not a good look for Star Wars as a whole, like as a brand, because you have a lot of people online. Like I saw people like on Twitter, like whatever, Twitter's Twitter, so take that for what you will. But like when this news was breaking, I saw plenty of people posting like bullet points. Oh, list of Star Wars things that have been delayed since Disney bought Star Wars, and it was like add Knights of the Old Republic, So like I see people like talking like that, and they're throwing the game like Knights of the Old Republic in with like the Boba Fett movie, the Kenobi movie, like things like that. And like to me, like I'm as critical as it gets when it comes to Star Wars. Like if they mess up, it's like I'll tell you about it. Like I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But to me, it's like Star Wars now is getting kind of like an unfair like bludgeoning from the fans, because now it's like, because of like this game issue, now this is getting thrown in with the movie issues and making like the movie side of things look worse when it shouldn't be. And it's just like, you have these type of things keep happening, and it's like, oh man, like I joked to my good friend, I was like, can Star Wars just ever catch a break? Like it just seems like Star Wars keeps taking on the chin, like all these controversies, all these delays, all these things. It's like, can we get like a 4-year stretch? Actually, not even a 4-year. Can we get a 2-year stretch of like nothing going wrong at Star Wars? Like that's all I ask. And it's like, I don't know. It just makes it really tough on the brand as a whole, because, then you compare it to like Marvel, and like, what has Marvel done really wrong in the last even 10 years or whatever? Like they haven't. So it's just like, I don't know. It's just Star Wars is in a tough spot right now.
Yeah, the thing that bothers me, right, is if you look at all the games that are currently in development, which I will talk about as soon as I get my thoughts out here, but out of all the games, you think this would be the most surefire game, right? I mean, First of all, you have a game that is still technically Legends, as was stated in the announcement. They are not
Well, the
gonna. This
legacy
is
behind it.
Yeah, but this is a Legends game, so they don't have to
Yep.
go through as much care as, let's say, Jedi Survivor. They don't have to check back with Lucasfilm for how a chair looks or how a door opens, and the really crazy minutia that we hear from just how they have to deal with this like canonical storytelling. I would assume they don't have to go to the level if it's a Legends game. Then it's like, who cares? Just let them do what they do. It's not canon, whatever. So that's one. Two, they've already made the story of the game. The Drew Karpyshyn, the writer of Knights of the Republic, that game exists. You just go and you cherry pick the best moments from that, and you build up a brand new game engine that supports third person action because you have not you have somebody that made not Dark Demon Souls is on this, somebody that made Ghost of Tsushima, so they're obviously going to make it more of like an action oriented combat style versus turn based, which I think most people that I talked to said all you have to do for KOTOR a remake is just update the combat style, and it's good, it's great, it's amazing. So that's all they have to do, and that's what it seemed like they were doing. So for me, I was flabbergasted when I found out that like, oh crap, it got delayed. Like this is the safest bet for a game like coming out on time. Like what happened? So like when you fire two creatives that are the leaders on this thing a week after they showed, it's like, what did they show them? Like how bad could that have been where they just got fired like that without even any, like was it that bad? Like what? Holy crap!
Yeah, like that's what I'm thinking as well. Is like well, maybe here's the thing too to think about, like from another perspective and angle of it though, is what if they're let's say the what if the game was what you just like explained, like they updated a few things, um they kept everything else the same, etc. But what if the people they were presenting the game to was expecting a total overhaul like Fallen Order or something? You know what I mean? Like they had higher expectations because they saw all these other Star Wars games come out like Fallen Order, Battlefront, etc. And then they see how Knights of the Old Republic looks, and they're like, whoa, 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 like why does it look like this and not like Fallen Order? You know what I mean? Like higher expectations.
Yeah, it's definitely they raise the stakes, and I don't even know what engine this game was gonna be using. It's crazy, but man, oh man, like this just puts a damper on things because just last week we were talking about a delay for Star Wars Hunters. Then we get a delay on KOTOR Remake. What's gonna happen next? They're gonna delay Jedi Survival to 2024. Like, oh gosh, I shouldn't have even put that out in the ether because now that I put that out there, that could happen. But I was talking to guys on the Star Wars Underworld podcast. They were talking about the reveals of the figures that we were talking about last week, and I think Ben mentioned that those figures are going to be out this fall. So um, that bodes very well for that game to come out around March or February. Because why would they put out figures for a game a year before it came out? So I think that one's going to be pretty set in stone because EA and Respawn will do everything. Lucasfilm will do everything for that the game to come out on time because it already got pushed. Technically, that game was going to be coming out this year, but then they decided, you know what? Let's just put it on the new gen systems, which is the right thing to do because then they don't have to
Yeah.
make a game like Halo and have that delayed like a year because the last gen console couldn't handle the engine.
Well, well, I think that's one thing. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm like one of the biggest critiquers of EA because of my Madden experience. But like the good thing with them is at least at bare minimum, they're pretty good at hitting their release dates. Like for the most part, I would say.
Yeah.
Like you said, they push Fallen Order back because of the whole putting it to new gen. Like that's totally fine. But like for the most part, like Madden hits every year on time, Fallen Order hits on time. Like most of their EA games hit on time because like that's one thing we know about that company is they love to make money, and why would they push games back and risk losing money? And like I think Fallen Order is pretty much a lock to make it into next year. I really do.
Yeah, it's got to be, but like the more they push these things back, the more
Oh, it
that the
makes you
stuff.
worry. It's
Well, no, I was gonna say the more they push this stuff back, the more of a chance there's gonna be one hell of a Star Wars year when we're gonna get like 3 or 4 games in one year because they'll just all be coming out.
hey, bring back the olden times, like the late '90s, early 2000s, when we're getting like games left and right. Like crank them out, Star Wars.
Yeah, like
We need it. We need it.
so right now we have 7 games currently in active development. We have KOTOR Remake. We have Respawn, which is working with the Bit Reactor development team to make a Star Wars strategy game, which I'm crossing my fingers here that it's going to be a Empire War remake kind of spiritual successor in a way. We got the Respawn. It's also working on a Star Wars FPS. I'm guessing that's gonna be a single player game, maybe like Republic Commando. We got Star Wars Eclipse. We got Star Wars Hunters, Star Wars Jedi Order or Jedi Survivor, and whatever Ubisoft's open world Star Wars game is. And I think that game is going to be coming out sooner rather than later because they just delayed the Avatar game, which is being made by the same developer, by like 2 years. So I'm thinking, this is again more speculation. Don't take it with anything than a grain of salt. Maybe they delayed that game to push up the Star Wars game or something. So that is something that might be talked about in September when Ubisoft has their upcoming like press conference thing with their upcoming games. So there you go. There's 7 games currently in active development. I mean, I'm just assuming KOTOR will come out eventually. People are saying that there's a good chance it just might not ever happen just based on how bad this thing might have gone, but I'm going to try to remain optimistic as I can. Um, the title of the stream is "Should We Be Worried?" And yeah, I think it's something to worry about when you, as you put it, they fired 2 of the lead people. So this that could be a whole revamp of the game. It's it is what it is, right? And I've gotten used to some of these damn game delays that, for me personally, not even just looking at Star Wars games, but just games in general. Just look at this. If you're complaining, and I do this all the time, and I have to take a step back. If you're complaining about you can't play the games that are supposed to come out this year, there's no way you played every other game that came out the previous year. So it's just a
Yep.
good time to tackle your backlog. Right now, I'm still playing through Lego Star Wars, and I'm having a blast. After that, I plan on playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla. That game came out almost 3 years ago at this point, or two
Yeah.
years ago, or
Oh
whatever.
yeah, that's the big thing as well. Like, of course this is a Star Wars show, but like, like branch out and try other games like in the meantime when Star Wars is on hiatus in terms of gaming, like branch out and find other games. Like I know for me, when I get Game Pass in October when my Xbox Live expires, I'm gonna probably play the Mass Effect games because I think they're on Game
Oh,
Pass. And I've never really played those before. Like
dude.
I've played them like very sparingly, way back in the day, like on the first game. But like I've never played them on like current systems, anything like that. And I wanna just play through them because it's like a change of pace from Halo and Star Wars and Madden and all that stuff. And I wanna
Yeah.
just do a full like Mass Effect playthrough.
Yeah, so if you get Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, which is 15 a month, that includes
Yep.
Xbox Gold, and I'm sounding like a damn infomercial for Xbox right now, but it really is the best deal in gaming, I gotta admit. And you get access to EA's entire catalog, which does include Star Wars Squadrons, Battlefront, Battlefront 2, Jedi Fallen Order, and Jedi Survival will come there probably like a year later. Um, but they also have Mass Effect Legendary Edition, and that is like the de facto version to play because that is updated for like the current gen systems, and you're getting fast load times. It looks freaking beautiful, and that is also on my agenda playthrough. Even though I played through the first game about 3 or 4 times when it first came out, because that is the video game version of Star Wars. If you ask me, it's like the big space opera, and it's the game that takes place over 3 different games in a trilogy, and all your choices do carry over between each game. So it is fantastic. I don't want to turn this into a Mass Effect podcast here, but for those of you that are Star Wars fans, definitely check that out. But yeah, just closing thoughts on the unfortunate delay of Knights of the Republic. This is probably one of my most anticipated games. Heck, I spent the last 5 6 months like avidly looking at eBay and any other store for a graphics card because I knew that this game was coming out pretty soon, and I wanted to play it on my PC since I don't own a PlayStation. So
Yeah. Oh
yeah,
yeah, that's the thing to think about when it comes to that. Like I seen plenty of people like like again, don't get me wrong, sample size Twitter comments, so take it for what it is. But if you go to the original tweet, like under that Bloomberg tweet from that reporter, like a lot of people were commenting, and it wasn't just like spam comments. It was like genuine comments, like, "Hey, I just like bought a new PC for gaming, and like this is one of my highlight games I'm looking forward to," or "Hey, I was gonna ask for a PlayStation this year for Christmas or whatever, blah blah blah, because of this game, etc." So like, there are a lot of people that were looking into getting new gaming systems, like, and this was like a big influence on it. And now it's like, well, maybe I should wait on doing that.
Yeah. So there you have it. We'll keep you guys updated as we always do, with everything on the video games specifically here. Is that it is my passion, and no matter what, I'm still gonna be enthused, and I'm still very much looking forward to Jedi Survivor as the first Star Wars game in this era that actually has a continuing storyline, right? Like Jedi Survivor. I was thinking about this the other day about the fact that Battlefront 1 didn't have a story. Battlefront 2, whatever. Squadrons, it's its own thing. This is the first Star Wars game in a while where they're building a franchise. We're going to see where Cal Kestis has been. We're going to hopefully find out where he's been for 5 years, because it goes 5 years in the future. So I'm just looking forward to the development of a character that started in a video game and is continuing in a video game. I think that's super cool. Hopefully there will be a trilogy one day where we can talk about the Star Wars Jedi trilogy, right? Or something like that. So there you go. All right. Moving on, we have an update on the High Republic. This is the High Republic. Phase 2 crawl was revealed today, actually, on the High Republic show. So I'm going to read this off in as dramatic fashion as I could possibly get, maybe, if I can pull up the actual article. Okay, here we go. So Star Wars The High Republic, Quest of the Jedi. It is a time of great exploration in an effort to unite the galaxy. The Chancellors, and that's Chancellors with a plural, of the Republic, working alongside the courageous and wise Jedi Knights, have dispatched dozens of Pathfinder teams into the farthest reaches of the Outer Rim. But it is also a time of great uncertainty. Communication is unreliable, and tall tales of mysterious planets and monstrous creatures abound. Prospectors and pirates roam the frontier, and the worlds of Irem and Arona are locked in a forever war. And on the far-off planet of Dalna, a new threat to the galaxy is beginning to emerge. So, first thoughts on that, Ben?
See, I think that, I mean, to me, like, not even being like a person that's like dove like deep into the High Republic, other than just like, listening to your stuff, listening to other spoilers, etc. Like, to me, that's an interesting, I would say, hook to get someone interested, like looking into it more, just because like the whole, when it comes to Star Wars or any type of storytelling, like the idea of like a new threat coming, like it's like, oh wait, what's this about? Like, and then, it could make people like go and start like reading, like say even saving just a Star Wars fan who stumbled upon this like article and read it, and they're like, oh hey, let me go back and look at this High Republic stuff now. That sounds interesting. So I feel like it's a good tease for people that have read it, but it's also a good tease for people that haven't gotten into it as well, if that makes sense.
That's a good point. And speaking of which, this does preclude the events of Phase 1. I know it's a little bit kind of crazy. It's like, wait, Phase 2 takes place before Phase 1. We're all Star Wars fans, right? We know about the original trilogy, and you have to go back to the prequel trilogy, and you go to the sequel trilogy. So this is essentially what has exactly happened with the High Republic. So we're now 150 years before the events of Phase 1. If you want to calculate the time based off where it is after, or before, or rather, the Phantom Menace, it's about 350 years before the Phantom Menace. So we're getting ever closer to the Old Republic era. And I expect and I assume there's going to be references, hopefully, to an actual Old Republic era as we read through some of these books and the transmedia there. But getting into it, I like the idea, as I mentioned off the top, Chancellors. And we found this out at Celebration. Me and Matt from Ion Canon were talking about this in one of my videos, breaking it down, about the idea of having a co-chancellorship. Having one chancellor who is out in the fringes in the Outer Rim, while the other chancellor is residing in the core, and how they collaborate and how they are kind of, keeping the laws up to date and trying to push for more territories in the Outer Rim. I find it incredibly fascinating, and I'm very intrigued to see, like, how it goes from 2 to 1. What happens there? Why do we go to Lena So in phase one and everything there? So that to me is cool because it's a total shift on what we know as Star Wars fans. You know, going from Chancellor Valorum to Palpatine, of course, and that's where it ends there. That's what we know of. But yeah, what happens there? It's the unknown that really sparks my curiosity when it comes to, oh, I didn't expect that to be a thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like that type of stuff is interesting just because it lets you, like you said, it kind of lets you try to piece together like how do we go from two to just one? Like something obviously has to happen to get to that point. So yeah, it's just kind of like, not expecting what's coming. And then like, you've mentioned it before, and like we've talked about it before, discussing the High Republic in general. Like the good thing with all of these stories is like you have no idea what's coming next. Like of course you can guess based on like what's happening in the stories, etc. But you can't, like for example, like to explain my point, watching the Kenobi show. Kenobi has plot armor. Luke has plot armor. Vader has plot armor,
Yeah.
etc. Like none of these characters in the High Republic have plot armor
Nope.
basically. So, anybody could get taken out virtually at any time. Like you could have any of these main characters like in the High Republic like go through several books or comics, etc., and then just get taken out of nowhere because they don't have plot armor, like pre-established plot armor like, a lot of our on-screen characters do. So like that's a big bonus for this time period, I would say.
Yeah. One of the authors, Kevin Scott, is always getting flack because he has been like the George R. R. Martin of the Star Wars universe right now, and he's got a body
Yep.
count that is racking up close to George R. R. Martin's at this point. So, again, I was having a discussion about this earlier about how canon currently interfaces with everything with the movies, the games, and the TV shows. And there's been discussions online on Twitter recently where it's like, yeah, everything's canon, but some people think that it still hasn't changed. People still think that the films, the TV shows, and the video games set the precedent, and then the books and the comics, a lot of the times, they just kind of fill in the gaps. They serve as the mediatory kind of media, which is there to kind of flesh out some reference to things, but it's not like groundbreaking. But then you get to
Yep.
the High Republic, and the High Republic is a thing of its own because it's doing just what the movies, the films, the series, and the video games are doing. It's paving new territory in completely new eras that eventually the TV shows are going to go into, right? Like the High Republic was a thing before the Acolyte said it was going to be in the High Republic, so they already established that was an area. They were building up to that before the TV series was announced. So the High Republic is that area. If you're looking for hard hitting, surprising Star Wars content, this is the stuff you want to start reading because this is the stuff that, like you said, will truly shock you and add a lot more context to the prequels for sure, as it's already been doing with like the dogmatic ways of the
Well,
Jedi. We're seeing that kind of come through. Yeah.
I mean, it can do that, but it can also add context. I would say, of course, like this is a major assumption, but it'll for sure add some type of context to the Acolyte when that comes out because it's taking place after the High Republic era, like shortly after the High Republic era. So you'd assume that show's going to have like references to some of that stuff. Maybe some of the characters are bleed over characters from from like the tail end of the High Republic novels and comics and things like that. Like, whatever you would say like is the most like recent, like close to the Acolyte books as possible, or like the Acolyte series as possible. Maybe you'll get some of those characters or references to those characters, etc., in the Acolyte show itself, which would be
Yeah.
pretty sweet because
Mm-hmm.
presumably with it being Sith oriented, they'll be talking about all of these High Republic Jedi, or at least referencing to
Oh my
them.
gosh. I can't wait to be the guy that's gonna go around just not even caring about like going up to my casual friends, casual fans of my friends, be like, "Hey, remember when they said that guy, the Elzar man?" And I'll give them like, I don't even care. Like, do you want to know the backstory of him? They're like, "Yeah, whatever, man." And I'll just go on this tirade of long, like, 10-minute discussion of, yeah, he went over to this planet. There was this huge war. They broke through Valo, and they had this big festival dismantled with the Nile. And then he went to the Starlight Beacon, and that crashed down. I'll go over like a 10-minute
Yeah,
discussion,
I
and
could see
they'll be
that
like,
happening
"Holy
though.
crap, dude!" And I'll be like, "Yeah, go read Light of the Jedi."
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I could like, even us joking around about it, like I could honestly see that happening because, like, say from a Sith perspective, you're going to have your master and apprentice. Like, presumably the acolyte is the apprentice for the series. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what, like, the acolyte basically means student. So like, you're having the student and the master, and they would be talking probably about those Jedi. Like, what other Jedi would they be talking about? It would have to be people from the High Republic, unless they're of course talking about like the current day Jedi, like
The
in the
current
current
guy.
Acolyte story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because we
like
do know that this story is taking place like 100 years before, like what we
yeah,
see in the High Republic Phase 1. So I mean, that's still close enough where they could be like, hey, people like Yoda and whoever still lives by the end of the High Republic Phase 3, I guess.
yeah. So like I think there's a potential for at least some references. Like I don't think they'll dive like mega deep into the High Republic in it, but I think there probably will be references, especially with like the writers on the show being a bit younger. I'm sure they're more connected with like the people at Lucasfilm and like the story group and things like that. So like yeah, I think there's good potential for that. And then like you said, for like some of like the canon discussion, it's like it's great the High Republic can work around like not having to worry about like dealing with like the movies and shows and games. Like they can just do what they want basically.
Mm-hmm.
And like in current canon, you have to like really like Fallen Order. Like Fallen Order, for example, you can't go and like kill off Darth Vader in that series or something. Um, so like, you have stuff like that where you're kind of bootstrapped. But like heck, speaking of canon, one of the funniest discussions I saw this week, and you guys brought it up last night on the Underworld podcast, was like the Cassian Andor situation. So like I looked into it after you guys talked about it last night. So in Rogue One, like in canon, in Rogue One, Cassian's 26. So that means in the Andor show, in the first season, he's going to be 21 years old being played by a 42-year-old. Like, whew, man. I guess space aged him quick. Maybe hey, who knows? Maybe he had a backstory living on Tatooine when he was a kid, and it
That's all they
aged him
gotta
super
do.
fast.
They gotta
Like just
just.
say, hey,
Yep.
grew up on Tatooine and moved away from Tatooine, and I'm 21 and I look 42. Like when I was looking it up, you should see my face. I was like, I cannot believe he's 26 and he's going to be 21 in this series.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm gonna have to ask the story people that when I see him at the next celebration. Oh yeah, so
They'll probably be
Cassian's
like,
only 21, huh?
they'll be like, well, his birth certificate was faked.
Ah. Oh man, that's interesting though. Yeah, I mean, geez, you'd expect us to get a trailer. I wouldn't be surprised if we are next week are breaking down another Andor trailer because we will be within one month. We've always had a second trailer come out at about that 1 month mark, and there's always two trailers. There's always the first, then the second, and then after the second, it's like an onslaught of TV spots. So,
Yeah,
but then here's the thing. It's like, they also have the Lego special out next week.
I would
They
say I'd
want to
give it
like
2 weeks.
promote the hell out of that, and then as soon as I remember with was it Obi-Wan, the last episode came out and they announced something like the day that it was out, or it was Boba
Um,
Fett. It was the book of
oh,
Boba
oh, it
Fett.
was
The
Mando.
last
It was
episode.
Mando to Boba Fett.
No, it was the last episode of Book of Boba Fett. They put that out. Then they put out the poster for Kenobi the same day.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. Yep.
So I could see them totally doing that like Friday. Just keep an eye on YouTube because maybe we'll see a trailer or something. But if not next week, then it's gotta be the next week. It's gotta be. There's
Oh yeah,
like
I, c-
a little
I
TV
could see
spot
that
that's
happening.
already out there that shows like two images that it's not really worth talking about in my opinion. So, but what's worth talking about in my opinion is this awesome ILM docuseries. All 6 episodes are now streaming on Disney Plus. It's called Light and Magic. It's produced and directed and written by Lawrence Kasdan. I do believe that uh, Ron Howard's production company is the one that's in charge of this, so He's also, I think, like an executive producer or something, most likely on this thing as well. I have to check it out. But do you actually watch any of this yet, Ben?
Yeah, I watched the first episode today. Actually, when I was eating dinner, I just watched it like 3 hours ago. Um, and I really liked it. I was surprised at some of the stuff we got in it because to me, especially like with us being like hardcore Star Wars fans, I kind of went into it like not being like an arrogant Star Wars fan, but I went into it thinking like, okay, I probably know all this stuff. This is probably just for like your mom and pop who want to get
Yeah.
a quick behind the scenes type. You know what I mean? Like get a quick behind the scenes of Star Wars and keep it moving. But I was surprised. Like there was a lot of stuff that I didn't really know, or like at least like getting the different perspectives of some of the people working on the working on ILM. Like that was really interesting. And of course, just getting George Lucas. Like, I mean, us as Star Wars fans, it's so like George Lucas is kind of like your big missing Bigfoot these days. Like you don't hear from him much. Like you don't hear from him much. You don't I guess he's like your Yoda, like living on Dagobah. Like you just don't hear from him. And so it's just great getting to see George because that was definitely a new interview of George shot,
Oh
like
yeah.
older George. So it was great getting him talking and and then of course seeing like the old interview with him talking as
Yeah.
well.
On that
Like that
chair.
was really awesome. Yeah, on that chair. Like I'd actually not seen that one
Me
before, so
neither.
that must have been like an archived clip somewhere, or they might have found it from like a news thing or whatever. But I hadn't seen that before. And then just overall, like I feel like it was just a lot of like feel good stuff because like George mentioned in there, like they didn't have like the capabilities to go and do the special effects that they wanted, so they basically had to just create it. Like they had to like create the actual technology to be able to make the effects that they wanted. So it was cool like seeing how they got the whole band together to do that. Like yeah, so that's kind of like my opening, I guess, salvo for this.
Yeah, what I will say is that there is so much unused footage that I was going into this thinking the same thing. Like, is this gonna be entertaining for me? Because I feel like it's gonna be just recycled for like the mass audience that hasn't seen the stuff now that they have Disney Plus. But I was
Yep.
very, very wrong in his assumptions because by having all these legendary people like John, what is it, John Deerdick or
John, it's like Deerdick or Dreerdick or something. Like
so
I something like that.
yeah, so him, but then you have Dennis Muren, you have Phil Tippett, you have all those guys, and it's cool that they're, most of them are all still around. They're in their 70s, I'm guessing. So it's cool that they get that first-hand experience, but you could hear the passion that they're giving Joe Johnston. You can hear the passion that they're giving for the project and how everybody kind of like had to know a little bit about every aspect. Like, the model makers kind of knew how they would shoot it and they would kind of know like how they were doing the murals or whatever they're called, the backdrops that they were
Oh,
painting.
that was actually a very interesting
Yeah.
interesting part. Like not to interrupt you, I'll be quick on this, but like one of the most interesting mural parts was when they were talking about doing the mural for the Death Star shaft when
Mm-hmm.
Obi-Wan was walking out on the bridge. Like that part was actually really cool. Like how they explained it, like what it looked like before, after, like they flipped through the images of what it looked like before, after, and then like on screen. I thought that was really neat. And like they even talked on there, like, it is funny, like the way they make it. Like, you have these high bridges, like it's basically the fall to infinity, how they described it. And, the actual turnoff valves for the equipment is like on the outside, on the edge. So you're having to walk around this little edge versus it being like right in the front of the bridge. So it was cool, like seeing how they use the mural for that sequence.
Yeah, I love that stuff. Like it's like the volume back in the 1970s because you don't know where it starts, you don't know where it begins, and that was really neat seeing about that. I liked seeing the culture they have. The culture compared, there was, I forget the gentleman's name, but the one guy that was a little bit older, because most of the crew that was working at ILM, people that need jobs, they're out of college, they're looking for a place to work, they're in their 20s. they don't have a lot of connection. Like a lot of them seemed like they were living on their own. They didn't have families yet, so they were just spending like 16 hours a day just working on stuff they loved. Like it for them, it almost didn't seem like a lot of work. For them, it was just like a almost like a hobby that they were getting paid to do, essentially making cool stuff. But then you had this one guy that was like middle aged. He would go to Disney Studios working on animation, very like buttoned up, like very structured, and then he would show up to like the ILM place, and people would be like partying and just having fun, like going down like airplane evacuation inflatable slides and
Yep.
dunking in like water filled like storage crates to cool off because there was no air conditioning. Like all that stuff, I just loved hearing about it, and it just how it must have felt to just be on the cutting edge, but like also like not being super serious and like enjoying life a little bit.
Oh, for sure. Like that guy actually was one of course, like you have like the main people you enjoyed, like George, and George, of course, is like, the bit. I feel like the big draw for a lot of people watching this, because they want to hear more of George Lucas. But that guy from Disney, it was cool hearing his story because he mentioned that like his dad worked at Disney and he wanted to like step out of his dad's shadow, and like do something like more. So it was cool like that he was like working with all the people from ILM there. So like I really liked hearing like his story. And then like one of the best stories on there that I could relate to personally actually was when they were showing like the one guy, man, I'm really bad with these behind the scenes names, but like the guy who was doing like the stop motion claymation stuff.
Oh, Phil Tippett.
Yeah, Phil Tippett. I can relate to that because not with claymation, but like back when I was in like sixth or seventh grade, 12, 13 years old, whatever age range you are. So yeah, about 13, I would say, 14. I actually, got, first introduced to like that whole claymation stop motion thing, and I actually applied that to like Lego, and I literally made my own like little like 60-second Lego stop motion movie with I literally took like thousands of pictures.
Whoa.
Had the camera set up, and I take a picture, adjust the Lego figure, take a picture, adjust the Lego figure, take a picture, adjust the Lego figure, or adjust the set around it. And like by the time I got done with it, I probably had like, I don't know, 5,000-6,000 pictures taken. And then I went, spliced them all together, sped it up on Movie
Whoa.
Maker, did all that stuff. And then like by the time you get done with
Oh.
all of that, when you take so many shots and like you're
Yeah.
just making these micro adjustments, like by the end of it, like I literally had like um I mean, I guess at the time it would have been like the Obi-Wan and like Vader, like
Oh my
little Lego figures,
God.
and I had them like fighting with their
What?
lightsabers, like moving around the set and stuff. And it was like a little like
Oh.
60-second like little stop motion thing. I mean, it took me. I actually did that over a winter break one year for like the school year. Like you get your like week and
Yeah.
a half, 2 weeks off or whatever. And I literally did that. It was like 10 hours a day, every day. Like I had the Lego set up perfectly in my room, on a table, and I was like, okay, whatever I do, I cannot bump this or it'll mess up everything. So so like I can like definitely relate to like the people like that started with that stuff because I made like a little 60-second like stop motion short back when I was like 13 years old.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I wish I was creative. I would just get my action figures and not film anything, but like make really cool like what if scenarios with,
Sets. Yep. Oh
just
yeah,
the
like
shifts and all.
well that's some of like the best parts of this stuff. Like seeing all of this stuff. Of course, like we're not like we're not filmmakers or anything, but like seeing this stuff, like to me, it makes you go, oh man, I wish I was part of that culture. Like just seeing like their teamwork and stuff. It's like I would love to be a part of that.
Mm. So another thing I really liked about this is the fact that they're explaining about the models and how Star Wars, like a lot of the physics don't make sense, but I like the attention to detail nonetheless. Like they were talking about the Millennium Falcon. Oh, they would get this greebly to look like a wire that would be going to like a power box that would power this. So like they did like actually think about the design of some of these ships details that I never even crossed my mind. It also like blew my mind a little bit where I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting there, you know?
Oh yeah, some of those like the not I guess not mechanics or like I guess like the viewpoints like seeing how the ships were like moved around like you said like just it's interesting just to like get the perspective of how they were developed, like how the ideas behind them developed and how they like, translated to on screen. Because, you know, for the most part, I feel like a lot of Star Wars fans, like we've seen so many behind the scenes things like the one documentary on Disney Plus, I can't think of it. Empire of Dreams. Um like on that one, for example, like you see cuts and bits and pieces of like some of the behind the scenes stuff with like the ships and whatnot, but you don't get like the like in-depth detail like you do with these guys, like with this documentary, like specifically like explaining like, oh, we are doing this with like the ships, like the motion, just like the motion of like how, they were talking about like the models of the ships, like using them like, how they moved them around and like how George wanted them a certain way and blah blah blah. Like all that stuff was just it's just so fascinating to like hear all of these people talk about it.
Yeah, one of the cool things that was happening, that blew my mind as well, was how they filmed the different aspects of the models. First off, I like that they I wish I knew this guy's name. I should search it while you're talking. The guy that was in charge of ILM, John something.
John Knoll
No, he later was
or
in
no?
charge. This is the guy that was in the beginning. Guy with the
Oh,
beard.
John. Um, um, yeah.
John
I
something
mean,
with the.
you can type it up. I'll continue like what you were talking about. Like, yeah. So like what you were saying though, it's interesting like seeing like the way they shot like the battles and whatnot because George mentioned in here that so many of the other prior movies
Dykstra.
and things. John Dexter, yep, him like George mentioned like so many in the prior like movies and things. They would be these long exposure shots of like the ships and stuff
Yeah.
versus like these quick snappy
Yep.
cuts. And like George even mentioned he's like an energetic filmmaker, so he wants it to be quick and snappy versus like a long drawn out boring shot. And that reflects in his in specifically in A New Hope especially.
Yeah, one of the things that was there's a lot of cool George Lucas moments. The funnest one for me was when they were explaining about how they were taking so long doing like the escape pod shot, and then they did the shot with like the Death Star turbo laser, and they showed it to George, and he's like, "You only got me 144 shots, and this movie's due in 6 months." And he was like looking at the camera in the recent interviews, like, "Yeah, I was angry." But I was like laughing because I'm like, that's how constrained he was. It's like, yeah, he probably would have had a heart attack at the point where he was probably cursing every person out, on the set.
Yeah. Think like A New Hope. I at the time, it was called just Star Wars. Like at the time, like Star Wars, it was such like a tight project, as in like in terms of the time restraint for it. Like, they were dialing it down within 6 months, and then even a few months before it, they were doing edits and things, um, just because, like, the limitations of the technology back then. Like even you have all this great stuff with ILM, but still, it is like this. I guess it would be 1976 into 77. Like, still, you're not having any of the technology you even have on your smartphone now. So, like, the fact they were able to pull it off is incredible, honestly. Um, and yeah, that I found that moment really good too. Like when George said that, I was like, "That's great."
Yeah, and just how they had to scramble to Dykstra was getting these people hired that weren't even necessarily like, film people, because it blew my mind how they had to pioneer all this stuff. Like this technology didn't even exist to make these motion cameras and all. They got like people that worked on freaking motorcycles that were good with machines and machining parts and stuff. They would get like people like that to work, right? So
Yeah.
it was like, and at one point he was saying something about a certain part that was like $1,500, like an inkjet mold or something like that. And the guy was like, "Oh, just go out and buy it." And that was a $1,500. Like back then, that would have probably been like probably close to $10,000, I would imagine. The guy that like gave him the money just didn't bat an eye because they're over there in Tunisia spending like $100,000 a day filming. So like 1,500 for like a little simple like thing was like, yeah, just go and buy it. That's like a drop in the bucket for us. Just go out and get it. Like,
Yeah.
just the
Oh
production,
yeah.
how they would be buying up like literally bulk buying the little model kits for like the World War II fighters and stuff that you could buy like at hobby shops.
Yep. Well, yeah, out of those places, like the little the army figures, like all of that stuff, just to set the models up and whatnot. I mean, you had that, then you had them talking about how they were like buying up stuff from like the bulk army supply stores, like for certain shoots and things. Like that was pretty great. Like it's great. It's just so cool seeing like how they, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically innovated, like they had to come up with this stuff on the spot. Like you mentioned, there wasn't this technology to do these like motion cameras and different things like that. Like that would literally be like you and me going, "Hey, let's start a Star Wars podcast like we are." If we were in the time of like radio, let's just be able to do it from home. You know, let's somehow create a video web camera we can hook up to our radio station at home and talk to each other on it. Like, that's literally what it would be like. Like, how are we going to create a camera? So like, just the fact these people were able to create the technology they needed is just it's like so impressive.
Yeah, it really is. So, for me, as far as like not reading, watching this, as I said before, if I just like maybe watch one episode a week, that'll like take me directly into Andor. So I think that actually might be the approach I'm taking. Even though I can watch all these in like 3 days, I think I'm gonna let it simmer, have a nice like aged fine wine, and watch one episode a week and soak it in that way. Especially for a documentary, right? It's not a series where it's like, oh, I gotta watch the next episode. But what I will say is it's really well produced. I appreciate how it's almost like they're telling a story, and they have like music that overlays certain parts where it's like more upbeat, like they're getting their stuff together, things are going good. They have this upbeat music and stuff like that. So I really appreciate it as like a form of storytelling, the history of the story of ILM.
Oh, for sure. I mean, look at the intro. I love the intro actually. I
Mm-hmm.
really love the intro. Like, you get like so many creators. You get Spielberg, J.J. Abrams, you get George. Obviously, major props to them opening it with George talking. Like you have to do that for this, which they nailed it with that. But like you get him, J.J. Spielberg, all these iconic people talking. And like I loved even say what you want. Like I'm definitely like a critiquer of JJ's, but him saying, he thought when he first went into ILM, like it was gonna be like the whole, I'm going to Wizard of Oz and I'm pulling the curtain back and you're gonna be disappointed by the wizard behind like the curtain. And then he said, when he got there, he wasn't. It was like way more than what he thought. It was like magical. So like, it's cool hearing even like a creator as highly touted as J.J. Abrams say that like he was even impressed by what they had at ILM, and it wasn't just like a letdown like you'd expect, like going and seeing a wizard behind the scenes or something.
Mm. Yeah, so I'm just looking forward to. I'm happy that this exists. I feel like any movie aficionado or person definitely that's interested in visual effects and even the movie industry should watch this because it's not going to be just about Star Wars. And I do appreciate how this first episode was Star Wars because they literally made ILM because a production company like this didn't exist. And George Lucas says in this that he had to create something to handle this. But they're going to talk about Jurassic Park. They're going to talk about
I can't wait
Marvel,
for
all
the
that stuff. It
Jurassic
looks
Park
like,
one.
yeah. So I'm very excited for that, and it's cool to see the pioneers that work there. So um, I'm sure I'll talk more about some highlights throughout the next couple weeks as I work through work through it myself. But yeah, I mean it's like we have one release this week. We have Lego Star Wars next week. That'll give us what like 3 weeks of a break in between, and then from
Yeah.
August 31st till new who knows when we'll be in Star Wars every week. So, these slower weeks are gonna soon be behind us, just soon enough. But we'll be back with Milton next week for a traditional episode. Well, we all know that Milton's probably not going to watch Lego Summer Vacation, but don't worry, we will still cover it between you and me, Ben, till it
Yeah,
get
we
past.
will yeah, we will hold up the Lego end of the we'll hold up the bricks over here for the podcast. But
Oh,
yeah, no,
man.
next week's gonna be fun with talking Lego, and I'm gonna we can mention our thoughts on the second episode of this. I'm gonna watch the second episode of this documentary next week, um,
Same.
and just go from there. I feel like just basing on the way the first episode was produced. Here we go, like we're making predictions for something that's already out, but I feel like the way it was produced, they're probably going to go in like chronological order of ILM up until, however far they want to go up to. So I feel like they'll probably get into like maybe in the second episode they'll get into like Empire and Return of the Jedi, and then they'll transition out into like for episodes maybe 3, 4, 5, and then like the sixth will obviously be like the finale type deal. But like 3, 4, 5 will probably be like your transitional project, your other projects like Jurassic Parks and your Marvels um and that sort of stuff is what I'm guessing it's gonna head in that type of a direction.
Yeah, for sure. So that's going to do it to wrap up episode number 68 of Outer Rim Transmission. So we know what you're going to be up to next week. You know what I'm going to be up to next week, finishing this book. We're going to be watching more of Light and Magic. And we're going to be watching the Lego Summer Vacation. So make sure you guys all try to watch it if you want to tune in. Well, you don't have to watch it, but we will be talking spoilers next week. And Milton is saying he's laughing. He's joined us in chat, by the way. Full disclosure, he's celebrating his birthday today. So everybody go to Milton
Happy
Weber
birthday,
7.
Milton.
Happy birthday, Milton. Everybody go and send him a message on Twitter. Tweet at him, Milton Weber 7, wishing our awesome co-host a very happy birthday. It looks like he had some fun over there in Jacksonville, Florida on his adventures. So we're happy he got some time off to go and enjoy some time out there away from work and whatnot. But so yeah, you'll be able to see him next week, as well as me and Ben. Ben, where can people find you, and what can you be up to this week?
You can just mainly go and follow me on Instagram at RealBenMaynard. I'll just be posting like my fitness workouts, things like that. Just continuing this diet phase. It's just never-ending process because it's like a 7-month diet. So I got a ways still. So I'm going to be doing that, and then on Twitter I'll just be talking mostly Star Wars and DC lately, especially with like the Ben Affleck news and things like that. So you can find me on Twitter as well at RealBenMaynard. And then don't forget Milton's Instagram is Milton7Weber. So you can find him there as well. Because his Twitter's Milton Weber 7, and then his Instagram is Milton7Weber. We got to get that name changed, Milton, if you're still watching. Yeah. But yeah, you can just find me there, just talking Star Wars and superhero stuff, and I'll just pretty much be hanging out this weekend. It's going to be a pretty chill weekend for me. I'm probably going to be just catching up on. I might actually attempt to start Miss Marvel. I might do that. I might do that this weekend because now I can say, like, I can admit, like, I'm not the biggest Marvel fan. I know that for sure. And to me, I guess with all of this phase 5 and 6 stuff, like, I feel like now I have to start catching up on the Marvel stuff that I missed. So I'm gonna start working on that and probably catch up on Miss Marvel. I need to start Peacemaker still in terms of DC. My cousin's been like harassing me about that, saying how much I need to watch that. So I need to watch that. And then also, one thing I am looking forward to in terms of like movie stuff, I am so excited for that new Predator like movie. Like that looks amazing. So I'm super excited. Or show. Is it a show or movie coming to Hulu?
Movie.
Okay, so yeah, I'm really excited for that because I think that's next week or the week after.
It is.
It's okay. It's soon. I know that.
That and Lightyear are coming out on the same day.
Oh man,
and Lego.
I know what I'll be watching next Wednesday. I'll watch 2 out of those 3.
Wait, they come out on Friday because they're movies. Remember? So they
Oh
released their
yeah, I forgot about
series on
that.
Wednesday and the movies on Friday. So that's why I'm going to be getting up extra early on Friday to make sure I watch Lego before the show, before
Oh
work.
man, yeah. Gosh, we got a lot of stuff coming even in the downtime for Star Wars.
You're right. It really isn't a downtime. We think it is, but imagine back 6, 7 years ago when we didn't have anything on the radar, what we would be talking about in a podcast. But suffice
Oh
to
yeah.
say, that is it for outerrim transmission number 68. For all of my content, you're already in the right place if you're watching on YouTube. If you aren't, it's youtube.com/Starrapter. I'm going to have my review of the Star Wars Padawan young adult novel based on Obi-Wan Kenobi's early adventures that will be up later on in the week, as well as some more comic reviews. And, well, you can tune to us next Friday at 9 o'clock Eastern, where the full crew will be talking about the latest in Star Wars. And of course, you can download us on any of your podcast streaming networks of your choice. So we hope that you can join us next week. You could join us in the chat like Jesse and Milton did and have a nice, lively discussion, and some interactive segments will be coming back to the show as we did a couple weeks ago. So be on the lookout for that. Get involved that way. But for Ben, for Chris, and for Milton, who couldn't join us this week, that's going to do it for us here on Outer Rim Transmission. This was episode number 68. Thanks for watching, and transmission. There we go.